Check the description for the following discount codes. First things first, I must say a big thanks to Dave at BDH for lending me this shifter for review. He said he'd been inundated with YouTube requests or requests from YouTubers to borrow one or be given one, and even given one and paid some money, apparently some quite large sums of money, to review his own product. So that's interesting to hear. And he basically said no to everybody except me, and I consider that a real blessing, I suppose, really, because it's not very often I get to review really high-end sim racing products, you know, £2,000 sets of pedals or £1,500 shifters, or in this case an £800 shifter. And whilst it isn't the most expensive one out there, it may well be the best one out there, and potentially the best bang for buck in the high end. This is obviously £800 is still a lot of money to a lot of people, including myself, and that's why this is on loan to me and not being given to me. Dave can't afford to just give out £800 shifters, and you'll see why when I explain how it's made. And I can't afford or justify spending £800 on a shifter myself. But a big thanks to Dave and the guys at BDH for letting me at least borrow one out of all the other YouTube requests they have had to borrow one of these. So I do appreciate that, guys. Thank you very much. First things first then, when it comes to really high-end sim racing products like £2,000 pedal sets, us sim racers are usually getting our pants pulled down and being royally shafted. We see pedal sets constructed of mostly off-the-shelf parts, master cylinders, slave cylinders, hoses, fittings, even the pedals themselves, and sometimes even the actual pedal box, the sort of frame that it's all bolted to, is essentially an off-the-shelf product made by someone else, or possibly even made by the company themselves. And you see, you know, maybe £150 worth of parts and then a £2,500 price tag, and you just, it irks me that we can be charged so much money for so little, effectively. You know, what we have here is the exact opposite of that situation. Whilst this is still an expensive shifter, we're actually paying for something. Every part of this shifter is hand machined, not hand assembled, it is hand assembled, but hand machined out of billet aluminium or steel where necessary, some of the internal parts for strength. And what we're paying for not only is the price of the material, billet is expensive, but the 2 weeks labour time it takes to hand machine each of the components that go into this. We're paying for a time-served engineer's experience and labour to physically make this from just a block or a few different blocks of billet aluminium and turn it into what we see here. Now that is worth £800 because we're genuinely paying for something, someone's time, someone's experience, and all that put together to add, you know, 2 whole weeks of labour to produce just one of these. There's no mass production, there's no shipping the or emailing the schematics over to a company in China where they're all CNC'd out, you know, 100 an hour or 1,000 an hour and then assembled by some Chinese workers in the factory. Literally, BDH gets some blocks of billet and they set about it with their lathes, their milling machines, their drills, their files, their taps, and they make every single part by hand. Now, you may say, Carl, what you're dwelling on this, move on. I don't want to move on. This is what sets this apart from the other high-priced sim racing accessories or products that are out there. And it's worth dwelling on. It's worth mentioning just to really make sure you all know what it is that you're paying for here and why it's priced as it is. I must apologise. I'm using a phonetic steering wheel box to put the shifter on, because it just happened to be the perfect height for me to be able to rotate it round in this video and show you the shifter. It's nothing to do with Fanatic, and whilst the Fanatic shifter isn't a bad shifter at all, this one is much, much better, both in appearance, although that could be a matter of taste, and in quality. Like I say, hand machined, hand assembled, everything's hand measured with vernier calipers to make sure they're within spec, everything's hand tested. It doesn't really get any better from a quality point of view than what you see here. So that really was worth stressing that point, you know, and making sure you all know what it is we're looking at and what it is you would be paying for if you spent your hard-earned £800. Now, to cut to the chase a little bit more, sorry, I just hit my microphone. Is it a good shifter? Is it nice to use, and is it worth buying? So yes, it 100% is. This is the most realistic H pattern shifter I have ever used. It performs over and above any of the other shifters that I have used. Dave and the guys there have managed to come up with a way to really give you the feel of a synchro mesh engaging in a gearbox. If you're not familiar with what that is, when you change gear in a manual car in real life, I'm going to make this very, very simple. There are gears called synchro mesh gears, and not gears as in first, second, third, fourth, fifth, gears as in cogs, and they mesh together synchronously to allow a smooth gear change from like one gear to another, first to second, second to third, without like a horrible grinding, crunching sound. And that is really what you feel a lot of the time when you do change gear. There's an element of linkage, either cable operated or rod operated, in the mix as well, but that sort of final slotting into position that you feel in your car and that we feel here in this feels about as realistic as I think you can probably get. So yes, it is a really well made product. It feels really, really good to use, and whilst it is strong money, if you're looking for an H pattern shifter and that's your budget, I can 100% recommend it. Now, let's get into a few more of the details about the product itself. This is the only colour it's currently available in, which is just a polished aluminium, as you can see. We've got the BDH logo etched into the side there. Behind there is the electronics that control, I say control everything, register what gear you've selected. There's then a USB cable here that obviously goes off and plugs into your PC, as you would expect. We then have this sort of base plate here with 4 holes drilled in it. They will line up nicely with your aluminium profile, should you have an aluminium profile rig, and you can use your normal T-nut solution to bolt this onto your rig wherever you want it. We've got, this is presumably, this upright is steel. I haven't actually checked it with a magnet, but I imagine it is. We've then got a nylon white gear knob on the top. These are available in black or white. That's all that's available at the moment with regards to the gear knob configuration. There will also be, at some point in the future, a sequential option for these. It's in development at the moment, but that's the only information I really have. So whether that will be something that's an add-on for this or whether it's a totally separate product, I don't yet know, but I'm sure BDH will let me know as and when they want us to know. But there will be an option coming at some point. For now, it is H pattern only. We have a choice of, this is interesting actually, we have a choice of 7 forward gears and 1 reverse, with it being round this way. So if you installed it on your sim rig with this section pointing backwards, so you would, in the UK here, we would operate it, you know, like this with our left hand. So you've got 7, I'm just going to, this is a tension here, I'm going to wind it out because it makes it easy to move and show you, and we'll talk about that in a second. So you've got 7 forward gears and 1 reverse. Now the 7th gear is, well, operates the same as a reverse, whereby you have to push it that bit further across to get to it before you can engage into that gear. The first 6 gears, this is kind of awkward to do on a cardboard box. The first, because this tensioner doesn't adjust the left to right tension, it only adjusts the backwards and forwards tension. You can see I can literally do that with one finger, but for me to actually move it left to get over to first, for example, is still quite stiff. But yeah, so you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then push it a bit further for 7th and reverse, or you can install it how I did, which is round this way, having this section pointing out forwards down your sim rig. Now I naturally installed it like that for 2 reasons. One, I didn't like the idea of having stuff kind of sticking out underneath where my arm's going to operate. I thought perhaps I might catch myself on this adjuster. 2, I liked to be able to see this as I glance down to my left with my handbrake just above it. Nice to see it all, you know, in my peripheral vision, appreciate what was sat there. And also this then puts reverse all the way over to the left and either up or down. Because in this configuration, you wouldn't have a forward gear all the way across to the left and then down or up above a reverse gear or below a reverse gear. That would be a bit of a strange way to set it up, because you can literally map these inputs in your sim to wherever you want, which is why you can spin it around and have it in each direction. You don't have to have reverse over to the left. You can have it over to the right by spinning it around like I showed you a second ago. Now I set it up like this, and so for me reverse was push a bit further and go up, and then my 6, that then left 6 forward gears available and 1 all the way across and down that wasn't being used for anything. Now I experienced an issue with this, and I spoke to Dave at BDH about it, and that issue was when I was frantically trying to get into first or second during a rally stage, and I had the tension up quite high, so I'm very aggressively changing gear. You carry that aggression to your sideways movements as well, and I was semi-regularly pushing it too far and going into reverse instead of first, or the gear that was below reverse that was unmapped instead of going into second. And it took me a little while to realise what was going on. My missus had a go, she experienced the same thing, as did a couple of our friends that were here. Now, if you back off the tensioner to make it a lot easier to change gear, you're not changing gear quite so aggressively. It doesn't happen very often, and I'm sure you would get a sort of a mind-muscle connection whereby perhaps it doesn't happen at all. But when I spoke to Dave, he said, really, Carl, whilst you can fit it this way round, you know, it's like if I bought it, it would be up to me, I can do whatever I want with it. He said, really, it is designed to be installed in this configuration, whereby there's nothing to the left of first and second. That is as far as it will go across, and your reverse gear is all the way across here, and then up, and then the 7th gear below it, or reverse down the bottom, the 7th at the top, which is actually what you would do, because it goes 1, 3, 5, 7. So yeah, 7 would be at the top, reverse would be at the bottom. And in that configuration, it doesn't happen. You don't end up accidentally slipping into 7th or reverse. Just like with any other 7-speed shifter, it's not something that ever accidentally happens, because you're not changing up into those sort of 5th and 6th gears quite as aggressively as what you seem to down change into first and second, or at least I don't anyway. So should you buy one of these, we do recommend, as in me and speaking to Dave, he also recommends that you install it in this configuration with the gear stick actually at the most forward point of where you want it to be, and this section sort of would be underneath your arm. And as you can see, my fears of perhaps clouting that if I level my arm out were totally unjustified. There's a massive gap there, so that's not going to happen either. So that's the way it should really be installed, albeit you are free to do it the other way like I initially did, because that's where I wanted my reverse to be. But yeah, that was a small problem I encountered, but it isn't really an issue because I shouldn't be installing it that way. I should be installing it this way. So worth noting, I thought, in case like me you wanted your reverse over to the left, it may not be the best way to do it. You may be better off running at 7 speed and keeping your reverse over to the right. I still, much like with a Fanatic shifter, I still don't like the idea that 7th gear requires an additional input. On the Fanatic shifter, you have to push down to go into 7th, and on this, you have to push against that extra bit of resistance. If you've ever owned like a mid-2000s BMW or even a 90s BMW reverse, you just have to push that little bit further and across to get it up. That's how it operates on this, and that is easier from a getting into 7th gear point of view than what the Fanatic one where you depress it is, because like I say, I was doing it by accident when I had it round this way. So that's definitely preferable to the depress it and move it scenario like the Fanatic one. But I would still like, because a lot of cars, you know, in games do have 7 gears, and it would be nice if 7th was just as easy to go into as all the other gears, all the other forward gears that is, and reverse on its own either required to be depressed or perhaps an extra bit of oomph to get it in. Now, let's talk about this tensioner. As I mentioned a minute ago, if you back it off all the way, you can literally have it where there's no resistance whatsoever. Obviously, you would never want to do this. And then as you gradually move it in, straight away you get a little bit of a clonk as it's engaging now. And this is by far the smoothest and most progressive tensioner adjuster I have ever tried on any shifter in sim racing. It's very smooth to actually use, and the adjustment is so incremental. If you look at how far that actually is out, and this is a little lock wheel, so once you get it where you want, you just lock it off like that. If you look how far that's sticking out, and it can come out to about, I mean, you wouldn't want it that loose, but it can go out that far. And then you can wind it a hell of a way in. And as you do, it just gets stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. Not necessarily the nut here. This does get stiffer and eventually you'll need an Allen key. But this, it's just like, I'm already at a level where, wow, yeah, that's already like probably harder than I would use in game. And we've still got a fair bit of adjustment on there to go. You can do that up whereby I almost couldn't change gear with it bolted to my sim rig. So you've got all the adjustment you need to get that exactly where you'd like it to be from a tension point of view. And as I say, it's super progressive and super smooth, and the adjustments are so fine, you'll be laughing trying to find exactly where you want that to be. In fact, it's one of those situations where like you could almost do with just having 4 presets. That way you haven't got this like, oh, do I just go another quarter of a turn? Oh no, a little bit of back an eighth of a turn. You could be there for days tweaking to get that perfect tension on your shifter. But it is a good thing in reality, it's not a bad thing. So yeah, I do absolutely love this shifter, as I'm sure you can tell from my enthusiasm in this video. Let's try and give you a little bit of a close-up of everything here, just so you can see in a bit more detail for yourselves exactly how it looks and what it is. But as I say, you know, hand machined here in the UK, something that you can't say about many things, or probably anything these days. You know, and the quality speaks for itself, the way it feels speaks for itself, the way it operates speaks for itself. And Dave and the boys at BDH, you know, the time they put in, 2 weeks of labour time to make one of these. And, you know, and he was saying he really doesn't make that much sort of additional profit, if you know what I mean. It's just the labour rate plus the materials. So it's no different to doing any other job, I suppose, for those guys there. And again, you know, he said he's not interested in charging stupid money and making massive profits. He just wanted to make a good product for people who want an H pattern shifter and want something that feels as realistic as you can possibly get. And that is what he's achieved here. You know, like I say, apart from perhaps not mounting it this way, like I did, where you get that little issue where it falls into reverse, or what could be 7th if you were to use it. Aside from that, you know, I don't have any complaints, and it isn't even really a complaint, because it's funny, when Dave said to me, he said, Carl, he said, most people fit it the other way around. And I'm sure he was just being polite, and what he was thinking in his head was, Carl, you bellend, you fitted it the wrong way round, mate. No, I'm sure he wasn't, but he probably was, because that's what I would have been thinking. And he's right, you know, but he didn't say to me, Carl, make sure you fit it this way around. And he did say it is designed to really be as universal, you know, as it can be, and be fitted however we want to. But I could just picture him sitting there chuckling to himself going, you bellend, Carl, put it round the other way and it'll be just fine. So that's what I did, and of course it was just fine. But that was the only sort of minor gripe I had, was that the way I wanted to fit it, you know, just meant I had that issue with it sort of falling into those bottom two positions when I didn't want it to. Dave said he may sort of ponder on perhaps refining that mechanism and the way that bit operates so that you can fit it how I wanted to. But I said to him, it's not, you know, it's not necessary. If you've designed it to operate and be installed in this direction, far be it from me to come along and install it the other way round and then complain that it slips into the wrong gears. You know, that's my issue for not installing it the way that you designed it to be installed. So yeah, I won't hold that against him, and it really isn't a problem. But I think that's really all there is to say about it. If you're in the market for a very realistic H pattern shifter, and Dave has got a lot of experience in rally in real life, and has been sort of building race cars for years. And originally he said actually this was going to be designed to feel like, I think he said it was going to feel like a Quaife Mark II Escort gearbox. And then, now what did he say? The guy he built the first one for, who is a fairly well-known racer, and I've forgotten the name of him in real life, actually asked for it to feel more like, I think he said an MX-5 gearbox. So I think perhaps what we've got here is somewhere between the two, because I've driven many MX-5s and their gearboxes are all right. They're nice to change gear. This definitely feels better than that. But I haven't driven any Mark II Escort rally cars with Quaife gearboxes. So perhaps we're getting a little bit of both in the mix here with the way it feels. But all I can say is it feels spot on. Oh, in fact, there's I took a little clip of me just changing gear with it over there on the rig with the microphone near it, so that you can hear the sort of mechanism inside and hear it as it engages through the gears. So I'm just going to play that clip now. Hopefully it's come out reasonably well and you'll be able to sort of almost hear the quality and the way it's engaging. Let me roll that clip quickly before we finish the video. Yeah, so hopefully you could hear, I mean, it was only my lapel microphone hovering near the shifter, but hopefully you can hear how solid it sounds as it goes through those gears in that clip. And again, it's all back to the quality, the fact that everything's hand machined and handmade and hand assembled and hand measured and hand checked, and everything's just done by, you know, a real genuine engineer and, you know, rally enthusiast. So that really is what comes across when you have this here in your hands and when you're then using it on your sim rig. So yeah, this is a pucker shifter, and I am sad to be returning it back to Dave at BDH, but my wallet would not allow me to commit £800 to buying one. Even if I really, really wanted one, I will have to go back to being a lowly Fanatic shifter user for now, at least. But yes, thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate the loan of this. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the review. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. I'm sure Dave may be in there as well. And as always, take it easy.